some of the best like
Oh,
hangout I've done in Chicago has been in the burbs.
okay. I want to hear
Hello,
them.
hello, hello. Welcome everybody. I have a wonderful, wonderful guest today in our speaker series, Michael Winnick, who is I've been fortunate to spend some time with Michael. He has been an exceptional advisor and also, as everybody knows, the founder of Dscout, the man, the myth, the legend.
Oh yeah,
My Do you like that intro, Michael?
that's how I'm often introed. So you got it right. So I gave you a specific script and you followed it. So
Exactly, exactly. Let me get our both of our mugs on the on the on the screen. Michael, I am delighted to have you with us. One of the things that I really appreciate about you, Michael, that you know, this is a small community of founders who start like companies focused on research function. Um, and I feel like you are one of the few people that I know who have such deep expertise in research, and you were doing so much design and research before you started Dscout. It's truly, solving your own problems, and I think that's why Dscout is such a beloved product by its users, by its customers. So. I am myself in Oakland, California. Michael, you are in sunny and cold Chicago,
yeah, outside
it
it's
seems like.
not cold. It's
It's not
as
cold,
my kids would say,
cold for California.
it's giving fall. I should have like a pumpkin spice latte. I should be rocking a pumpkin spice latte right now. We are in peak fall. It's quite nice here. Good to see a couple Chicago people in the
Yeah,
chat. So really excited to
yeah.
have you. Thank you for the kind intro. I think it is both just like being a researcher, sometimes it's great to be in the domain that you're in, right? To be a user of the thing you're researching, and sometimes it can be a hindrance. I think the same thing is true as being a founder in this space.
Hmm.
So, certainly in the early days of Dscout, I was solving problems that I was experiencing when we were doing field work at Gravity Tank, which is an innovation firm that I founded and ran for a number. I didn't found, I joined and ran for a number of and so I was like, hey, I'm solving problems that I encountered, and a little bit I was like, oh, probably could have done some more market validation and some more setup. And so some of the early struggle was trying to separate myself sometimes from my own experiences from the thing that we were researching or trying to build. Yeah.
So take us back, right? Like I think we have talked about this story. How, first of all, like I love asking all of our guests, how did you get into research? Because typically there's never like a straight path
Yeah.
for research. So that'll give us some context, and then I have some questions. You're one of the few people, researcher turned CEO, so you have both the perspectives. So I want to go into that and how we can
Yeah, my
kind of,
path
yeah.
around research kind of started early in my career, but I, in many ways, have almost played I've worn almost all the hats of the people we sell to. I actually started in product very early, in which I think about so much now. Right when the early late '90s, when the web was getting started, my first job was actually
Right.
at Wired. I was on the product side there, and then. I went on to do a number of product roles. I went to design school, and kind of and then I was a innovation consultant for a while. But kind of through that whole experience, I was always attracted to what I think are like the fundamental strategic questions, like who are we building for? Where do we want to play? What should we build? How should we, how are we going to differentiate? How are we going to win, right? I think those are all
Mhm.
like the core strategic questions, and I think they're inherently research questions. And I think both
Right.
I think both the fun of our field and the challenge of our field is those are really easy questions to ask. They're
Right.
really hard questions to answer, and that's why sometimes companies, like it feels like they've cracked some magical code, right? When it happens, right? I think that is both the thing that makes our jobs really exciting and interesting and also really challenging, right? Because as much as we want to say it's a formula and you apply this method and you do A, then B, then C, sometimes it's not that formula at all.
No.
It's just a way of doing it.
Yeah, honestly, like, if you asked any founder, any product leaders, like, why is this product working? I don't know if there's ever like a crisp answer to why is something like working. Like, there's always a crisp answer of why something is not working. But there's because you always have theory, you keep you keep like working from theory to theory. But
Yeah.
why is it working is never like, oh, you're trying to figure it because once it starts working, you don't kind of ask those deep questions anymore, which you
Yeah,
should.
it's still somewhat alchemical, right? It still feels a
Right.
little bit magical when
Hmm.
the things line up, and and I think that's actually one of the best parts of what we do is the
Hmm.
re that's still very much true, and I think will become actually even more so as we're
Hmm.
kind of in this new AI era.
Which is a great segue into our conversation. Um, for some announcements here. The call is being recorded. We will have this conversation recording over to everyone who registered. The chat is open, so if you could post like where everybody's calling in from. I see people have already started posting that. If you have discussion, if you have comments, please post there. If you have a question from Michael or myself, post it in the Q&A. It is very important that you post it in Q&A because that makes it easy for both I and Michael to be able to see the questions, and then you can also upvote and downvote. Well, you can't downvote, but you can upvote the questions that other people posted. So with that, let's jump right in. Michael, so you were talking about the coming era, and we have talked about the coming era, the era that's upon us, the AI era where everything is moving very, very quickly and things are changing very rapidly. So you have kind of this unique perspective of both a researcher and a CEO. Um, what do you think? Two-part question. What do you think is one of the questions that we keep asking ourselves as researcher is like, how do we make a strategic impact? How does research turn into a strategic role, right? So in a CEO's own mouth, like how how does a researcher become a strategic ally of the C-suite, of the leadership? And then how is that changing, or is that changing in the new world in which everything is just moving so much faster than it ever did?
Great, these double barrel questions, man.
Double barrel question.
Keep
No.
them, keep them single barrel. No, okay, I got you. I think that's a great question. I think one of the best parts of my job is that I just get to meet incredible UX researchers, leaders of UX teams, leaders of
Hmm.
research teams, and frankly, I get to ask them a lot of questions, listen to them, and kind of see what some of the best people do,
Hmm.
and people that are able to have a lot of great strategic influence. And I think I have kind of four or five things that I think are kind of helpful as we're thinking about that, and I think
Hmm.
very germane to kind of the moment. So, I think the first is like I see a lot of I think the best researchers are able to kind of tie the behaviors and things they're seeing two levers and metrics that are kind of business friendly. So they don't even have to, for instance, they might see something like a challenge a user's happening and having and say, hey, this could impact this sort of behavior could impact our retention or the
Hmm.
frequency of people will coming back or the
Hmm.
amount they're willing to spend during this transaction. Now, I know that's simple, but I think the thing that often, which is great in this field, often people get snagged on is we almost get snagged on being over, like feeling like we need to quantify that precisely,
Hmm.
or we need to be
Hmm.
like, we need to have like how much, and that like how much is really hard. Like
Hmm.
you don't need to do that. You
Right.
just need to like be able to link to, hey, here, this is kind of tied to things that
Hmm.
are kind of the things that often executives are focused on, which are typically some sort of KPI. So I'd say linking to a KPI is way more important than focusing on like specific ROI, like
Hmm.
just to
Hmm.
simplify. So
Right.
I think a second thing, what I would just suggest is like um, I think a lot of the challenge in our field is especially on the research side. We kind of often are put in a role, I guess I'd say, of like um, trying to caution the organization. We see a trend inside the organization. We try to like kind of slow the organization down, and we kind of I always kind of say like we play a little karate. We're like,
Right.
no, 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 and I think like
Trying to
especially in
slow
my
the
time,
momentum down. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially in my time as a consultant, I think there's just
Hmm.
tremendous power in sometimes focusing less on the karate vibes and moving a little bit more towards judo, which is like
Hmm.
so in the case of AI, just to get very detailed, obviously I
Hmm.
think there is a general and I think very true feeling across many organizations that AI is almost this like kind of like this onslaught. It's like being like pushed down, and I feel like a lot of people feel this sense of like, ugh, you know,
Hmm.
and there's a
Yeah.
little bit of the pushback, right? And I think that it's a key moment to learn how do we actually channel some of that energy. For instance, I don't think there is any CEO that would really want to spend billions of dollars on AI and not have it get any return in terms of like how it's going to actually impact users. So it might be like, hey, let's do this, but for the where we're making major investments, let's how can
Hmm.
research help us do that in the best way?
Right.
And kind of guide us down the path towards where our energy already is
Hmm.
versus doing a lot of blocking behavior, which again, I think it
Hmm.
totally resonate with as like an emotion and a feeling
Right.
which I think is very natural, given the amount of time people in this field spend with end users, right? And kind of
Right.
they see those disconnects, I think, very viscerally. And maybe that's kind of
Yeah.
like one. I'll make two more points. I think
Yeah.
one is just that like I do think that um, something I talk a lot about with Julie Norvisis, who does a lot of work on our community side at Dscout and has been a collaborative of mine for a number of years. But like insights and decision making are actually like they're actually I almost think they're not nouns, they're verbs, you know, they're
Hmm.
inherently emotional. And so, I think the power of our field in a lot of ways is to recognize that like we need to create experiences for people. That's why videos resonate so much. We need to create
Right.
these times for people to interact with customers. And so finding those moments I think can be really powerful to drive strategy because literally, all human decision making has an emotional component to it. It's
Right.
never purely a rational act. And maybe that's the last point, which is just like people in this field have incredible superpowers and strengths. And we just have an opportunity to really focus on how do we bring those to bear, not just in the work that we do, but inside of our companies. So our
Hmm.
tendencies towards curiosity, our ability to facilitate and actually like lead a group, our ability to visualize. I think those are really powerful skills that can help
Hmm.
us become ultimately much more strategic partners inside an org.
Hmm. That's a there's a lot of wisdom in that in those points. So let's like unpack some of these, right? One of the things that the first point that you mentioned was this idea of like I feel like any insight team feels compelled to come up with like metrics, right? Like, oh, if we fix this or this challenge is
Yeah.
slowing down our checkout rate by X%, right? Like, and I think there's a lot of like literature out there where like, oh, you need to like tie yourself to business outcomes and like tie yourself to business metrics. Just tying yourself to business metrics doesn't mean you have to always talk in metrics. It seems like what you're saying. It's like it
Well, I
doesn't. You
would
don't
think a
need to have.
little.
Yeah.
I think
Hmm.
sometimes we can get very literal and say like this
Hmm.
will lead to a 2% lift in this or drive that.
Hmm.
Sometimes even ROI like will kind of get very like we have to calculate the ROI of every project that we do and its
Right.
return. Like nobody
Yeah.
does that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think it's simply just learning enough of the language of the
Hmm.
organization that we can just simply link the insights we have, which are typically very users are frustrated with our checkout
Hmm.
experience, or users
Hmm.
find drop off of users find this part confusing, and just being able to just take that one level up and say, okay, cool, what business metric is that tied to? Just that
Hmm.
simple, just the simple connection. Um,
Hmm.
Not even having to quantify it, not having to specify the scale of the impact, just the connection, I
Hmm.
think really
Hmm.
helps in terms of feeling like you're kind of speaking the language of the organization.
Language.
And it also it kind of allows the organization to kind of metabolize the insights more effectively.
Hmm. Hmm. That's funny because one of the things that I've been talking to some senior members of my team is this idea of like, what does executive presence look like, right? Like some people were like, oh, this person has an executive presence and this person needs to build
Like
an
you,
executive
Marvin.
presence.
Looks like
Yeah.
you.
Was that?
Looks like you.
Was
Incredible executive presence.
executive presence. Exactly. You should see me in board meetings, man. No. But this idea, and I think one of the feedback that I keep giving to them is like there's no rocket science to executive presence. It's this idea of what you said, like speak the language that people understand, right? Like go way more basic, like try and visualize what the team, what your audience's priorities are, and start from there rather than starting from what I learn and what I know and imparting that knowledge, right? And I think what you're saying is that's not different for a CEO. It's the same thing, right? Like just start to understand like what is the priority and what is the language, and then align whatever you want to talk about to those priorities
Yeah, I think it's just learning the language of the organization so it can
organizationally.
kind of effectively, like I said, it just helps to speed their catalyst. It helps to speed the kind of ability to pick up the insights that
Right.
might be dictated as more user frustration, user challenge, concern of, right, and kind of putting that in a way that the business is like, cool, if we do that, we understand how that's linked to the things that also help the business move forward.
Just
And
looking
I
forward.
I
Yeah.
think the best researchers do that really well.
Hmm.
I think for many, it's still a great area for to continue to develop and learn.
Right. And the second thing, I am so glad you mentioned all judo, no karate, because that's the thing that like
Yeah.
stick that. So for the audience, we have this, it's not, we don't just get together and start talking. We have like prep calls and all that. And when one of the prep calls, Michael mentioned all judo, no karate. And that has become like, and that has spread like a wildfire in my organization. Everybody keeps talking about all judo, no karate. So it seems like, I think one of the things that you mentioned that's such an important point is this idea that we have started sometimes we associate research function and especially like product research function from the point of view of like slowing things down, right? Like, oh, let's slow down, let's like look at everything else and kind of fighting against the momentum, which is what like karate does. But I think what your point is like, instead of trying to slow things down, let's like use the momentum in our favor, so go from karate to judo. So is that kind of what you're trying to
Yeah,
what the
effectively. Yeah,
analogy
I think
says? Yeah.
the trick is how do you find kind of where the organization wants to go or where a lot of the
Hmm.
energy is. I just think it's and kind of use that. I guess I'd say another metaphor. I think there's all these questions. I think everybody on the call probably feels time pressure. I think our field
Hmm.
is like habitually under this like time compression challenge.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the trick is also like time to what, you know,
Hmm.
like right. And so I
Right.
think there's just all sorts of ways you can kind of think like, yes, I recognize the organization is under pressure. And, again,
Hmm.
AI as an example, I think it was in many of the questions beforehand and probably come up throughout, right? It's tremendous pressure to ship things, you know,
Hmm.
right? And so I think sometimes it's recognizing those pressures and then finding where inside of that we can be like, yes, you're working on that, but let me help you get to either a thing that's the next step. The pressure to ship is quickly followed by what? The pressure of adoption.
Right. Right.
Oh, right,
Right.
right. Like we ship
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
nobody's
Exactly.
using it, right?
Yeah.
That's like the next step, right? So
Yeah.
so
So,
maybe
yeah.
your play is, hey, we get it, you're gonna ship, but let's focus on some things that in this set, ship the simple stuff, go for it. But
Right.
maybe some other places where we can actually work a little bit on connecting to a user problem, which is, by the way, the number one challenge in AI is
Hmm.
technology for technology's sake. So maybe we can
Hmm.
actually tie to a user problem, and we're gonna actually get to the next point faster. The
Hmm. Hmm.
shipping might be a little later, but we're
Yeah.
going to get to the next point faster and better.
Yeah.
So I think there's just like the kind of knowing, and I think it's like an admirable trait of this field that there is a
Hmm.
feeling of like, hey, I know a lot and I know this is we got an issue here. I think it's just being
Right.
selective and kind of thinking that you can use the a lot of where the organization goes while simultaneously using that momentum to kind of solve or fix user challenges that you see.
Hmm. Hmm. That's that's a great if there's nothing else that people take from this conversation, if they take like always judo no karate, I think that'll be a great out great takeaway. Somebody in the audience asked, is there a UXR? Do you have like an ROI metric that that you think UXR programs should be associated with, or do you think it needs to be associated with like the overarching, the big initiatives that the company has?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is always like a big talking point, and we've done a lot of work, and there's a lot of kind of articles on People Nerds about ROI. And I would just say like ROI sounds like a thing that is like really scientific, and you're constantly measuring like that's kind of not how ROI is. I don't think it happens that way very often. I
Right,
think ROI
right,
is often taking your best case studies and interviewing a bunch of people and trying to quantify impact. That's way more how ROI tends to
right.
be created. I would just say that's kind of my other point, which is like I have two comments on this. First is, as
Hmm.
I said, just the more you can tie to, you don't have to have the answer. Just the more you can
Hmm.
simply tie to like, hey, I think this can have an impact on retention. I think this can have an impact on basket size. I think this will have an
Hmm.
impact on percentage of people checking out. I think that's great. But I also say one of the benefits, a little bit counter to your first question, is one of the benefits of running very tactical research as part of your team and running programs with tactical research is typically much easier to tie to ROI than
Hmm.
strategic.
Ah,
Strategic research is actually
right,
strategy is indirect. You're going to hit this pool
right.
ball, hit this ball, that's going to hit that thing, and it's going to go in the. It's amorphous. It's indirect. There are a lot of things that enter into strategy. Whereas, hey, we have a rapid usability program. We identified a set of flaws in this key thing. We fixed those things. We saw a lift that's way easier to establish
Hmm.
like KPI, direct KPI impact when you have a very
Hmm.
healthy set of tactical programs that you're running. And there's nothing wrong with that. I kind
Hmm.
of am a believer that like uh, doing like a decent quantity of tactical work that you can tie direct impact helps to kind of round out the bigger story for your team and should absolutely be part of any research program.
That's
It's
a
in a weird way to say running really good tactical research is very strategic for researchers. It's a
that's really
strategic
interesting.
enabler for teams because we can
That's
tie to impact.
That's really interesting because that's kind of a like. By the way, thanks for the shout out to people nerds at Dscout. It's amazing resource. Everybody should go and check it out. Put some amazing articles. Um, but the stuff you said about like tactical research can be really easily tied to ROI, much more so than a strategic research, and and that's why it becomes a big part of, and it should continue to become a big part of some of the research work that organizations do. Um, do you then feel like is there it seems like kind of this kind of a hard choice that a research team needs to make. This idea of like I can do ROI driven tactical research, that means I'm not part of the strategic decision making, or I can do strategic research which might not be tied to ROI, and how do I kind of justify it then, right?
I
Like,
mean, if
so
you're a
is there a
basketball
false choice?
player, can you only do layups or only shoot three pointers? No, you're better when you're gonna score, you're gonna, have a better 3-point shooting percentage if you can also drive to the hoop. I feel
No.
like teams need to be able to do both. I think it's good.
Mhm.
I think many of them do both. I think it's just,
Mhm.
I think it's easy to get caught a little bit in the strategy trap sometimes.
Mhm.
Of like only our work
Mhm.
is only valuable if it's higher up. But like I
Mhm.
was talking to a research and design leader who mentioned that they did some very focused usability work that, they were able to calculate it had like a $90 million improvement on their checkout flow. And I was like,
Mhm.
I mean, oh, okay.
That's
That's
yeah,
amazing.
that's
Like
amazing.
again,
Yeah.
it's very literal versus like,
Right.
we help the company see this area and then, but because there's, a strategy has so many inputs, right? Like
Hmm.
it's by nature, there's a lot going on when you're kind of trying to look at strategic questions, which again, you can influence, but I think that ROI just gets much more indirect.
Right, right. And that's especially important in kind of the world we live in today, where things are moving quickly, where, people, the organizations are changing quickly. There have been a lot of like, not so great announcement coming from like design and research space in the last few weeks. So
Sure.
let's talk about it. I think one of the things that you talked about was like you were, in this moment of, I've thought that was like a really nice vulnerability where you verbalize what I've been feeling. It's like this is kind of scary time for everyone, right? Like, including leadership at every single organization. Like everybody's kind of a little scared, right? Like, uh, how can research orgs or design orgs bring value and and while they are also worried about kind of their impact and their job security, is it possible for them to kind of help their teams and their leadership navigate this kind of uncertainty?
Look, I don't want to like give pat answers to like a very complex time and very
Right,
complex moment for many people.
right,
I work in by most standards a small organization, right? And
right,
so it is hard for me to put myself in the shoes of leading a research team in a company with a few 100,000 employees and kind of how
right,
how you can influence leadership. So I want to kind of say that as
right.
a line, but I do think
Well, you
in
talk to a lot of people like that, and you
yeah,
learn
sure,
from a lot
sure.
of people
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say in general, I think like our field has I want to say a couple things. One is I think our field has a tremendous amount of value at moments of high ambiguity.
Hmm.
Because what are people scared of? We're generally scared of, or you talked about, like, I think all your leaders are to a degree scared, right? They're
Oh
scared
yeah, 100%.
because of the ambiguity of the moment and the
Right.
uncertain impacts that it's going to have. I think we all
Yeah.
sense the enormity of those impacts.
Right.
But the shape of those impacts, the timing of them, right? Like the potential. I think it's easy to like what I always say, like with the, in research you talk about within subjects and between subjects, right? Like between
Hmm.
subjects, but within subjects, like in a given day, I'm sure you all feel a sense of like this is so cool, or oh my God, this is I'm so scared, right? Like there's just a lot
Yeah.
of emotion going on, and
Right.
we talk about that a lot. So I think that that is just the natural state. If you,
Hmm.
the one note I would say is, the research team, research and design have been feeling these pressures for a while. Actually, this is what your whole company is feeling right now. This is not unique anymore to us. This is
Hmm.
what your
Hmm.
engineers are feeling. It's what your sales teams are feeling, your marketers everywhere across the company. There is this sense of like we're kind of at this moment of impending change, right? And there's a lot of
Hmm.
ambiguity. And so I guess I'd say inside that moment, I think when I would take the optimistic lens, which I actually think is kind of an important skill in these moments to kind of think positively about what we can be and what we can do. We are a function that can help to bring clarity. We have skill
Right.
sets around trying to clarify. In many ways, you would argue that might be one of our most essential
Okay.
capabilities is helping to bring
Right.
clarity. So it's a moment where people are hungry for that. It's a
Hmm.
moment for where if we can be the providers of clarity and direction, whether that's again through our research skills and bringing like how where we think this will impact people, what we see going on with them, whether it's through our visualization skills of like here's some pictures of what we could do or what this could look
Hmm.
like. I think those skills are very valuable right now.
Hmm.
It would be pretty awesome if you felt like if again, let's take the truth. All leaders right now are feeling that
Hmm.
sense of dis-ease or confusion or fear, however you want to say it. It's a great opportunity for our teams to actually be like, hey, we're going to help you.
Hmm.
Hey, I was able
I'm
to
gonna put,
rely on, talk about being strategic. I was able to rely on this group of people at this moment, right?
yeah,
And they were able to give me some direction, some focus, some
yeah.
drive, some point of like where I can kind of focus to have biggest impact. That's as strategic as you can be.
Yeah, that's so. I'm gonna press you on this. Let's do, because this is something that's so important, and I do think that there is value. But also practically, if I'm putting myself in like a researcher shoes or even a research leader shoes, right? Like, I don't know if you could they just walk into like Michael's office and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell you how to bring like I'm gonna help you become like more calm. I'm gonna help you navigate
I
this."
don't think it's
How
like
does
directly
practically
like
does
that, but you're all working. There's all different levels of leaders. So I don't know. Maybe
Mhm.
at some orgs that probably would be pretty hard at Dscout. I hope it's not. I mean, I think
Yeah.
or small company. I always kind of say my Slack handle is open for anybody. But I would say,
This
look,
is a message specifically for Dscouters.
okay, but I'm saying, if you're working at any, like, many people on this call are working for very large, complex organizations. Well,
Yeah.
they're still leaders you're interacting with. It might be your product manager, you might say as
Hmm.
a leader. It might be,
Hmm.
the product group lead, a pillar lead. There's all sorts of, that feeling is all the way up and down the org, right? So there's just
Right.
areas still of like of kind of where I think that clarity is still very vital. So I
Hmm.
guess I'd say I think we're, you know, yeah, that ties a lot to org culture. But I'd say big
Hmm.
picture, there's still somebody, there's someone that's making decisions that are influencing the
Hmm.
work that you're doing, that are probably many cases trying to figure out what to do with AI and where to play with it and I think you can still add a lot of value in those situations, regardless of
Hmm.
level. So,
Hmm. That's really good advice. And
I mean, I would say
honestly, I
like even
feel
on our side, some of our UXRs at Dscout, have been building some versions of prototypes to say, hey, here's how I think this aspect of our experience could look over a year. And I
hmm
see
hmm
those and other people's. It's not like I'm necessarily like, yes, let's go do it. But like, you know what I
right.
mean? But there's parts of it where I'm like, that's really helpful and really insightful, and it's a great way to crystallize things, right? So I think it's just behaviors like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly like I can imagine even for us, like, if hey, here's a prototype and this is kind of how it fits, in kind of the shifting markets. And it gives you a firm footing. And whether you use that or not, it gives you this idea of like, oh, there is a world, we have people trying to figure out what our positioning is going to look like in 12 months, 18 months time. Even just that, having that feeling is very it's kind of gives you this feeling of like, yes, we're going to we're going to get out ahead once the market shifts.
And I
um
also one last quick comment on that is kind of what you're saying is like, you know, I hope you operate in organizational context where proactivity is appreciated.
right,
But like in general, I would say proactivity is appreciated.
right,
I was thinking about
yes.
this thing. I have some thoughts about
Uh-huh.
this. I have some
Right.
direction on this I'd love to share. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is a great moment for a little proactivity to not simply
Yeah.
wait for being asked to do a thing or asked to run a study or asked to, think of a thing, but just saying, hey, given everything I've been thinking about, like, this is something I'm seeing or I'm interested in. I
Hmm.
think, I think that proactivity is also part of quote unquote being strategic, which is, to quote the famous Wayne Gretzky, like, you know, let's skate to where the puck is going to be. I probably screwed that quote up. We do have any Canadians on the call that can give me the
I'm sure
perfect
we
quote,
do.
but you get the idea. Is like sometimes being proactive, knowing where you think the organization is going to go, is also a really strong power move.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. The other thing I think there is a little bit of concern I feel in the research space. There's, look, we've been pursuing this idea of democratization of research for a while now, and AI has kind of supercharged this. And one of the things that I keep hearing about is this idea of like, are we, is research on the other hand going to one of the big value add that research brings to the table is this like deep critical thinking about the direction of the company. And do you think that in today's world, when we are all moving really fast, there are all these AI tools to help you move really fast, um, how concerned are you that research as a function might be missing out on this deep critical sitting with the data, taking your time, like and that has its own value. Like how do you navigate kind of those two parts of the
Sure.
process?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like real issues in here, right? And I think it's a
Mhm,
lot about like the identity of the field and also to these kind of questions about our ongoing value add. There are a lot of components, but I would say, big picture, like democratization, I like to say democratization is it's at this point it's not good or bad, it's just it's a thing in our space. It is being
right.
done some organization, but it's a fact. And I kind of think
Hmm.
just like I would say about many technologies, there's good democratization, there's bad democratization. We
Right.
can think about like what a good democratization program looks like. We can think about what a more challenging one looks like.
Hmm.
But I also would say, do think it can be an opportunity.
Hmm.
Back
Hmm.
to one of the things I think that has stymied our field a bit is we tend to focus very much on projects. We tend to have
Hmm.
been built up around the project, like run the project, execute the project, run the next project,
Move on to the next project. Yeah.
right? And one cool thing about democratization is by its definition, often it's treated as a program. So a program
Hmm.
starts feeling a lot more like a standard business process. A business process is like we've got goals for this program, we've got KPIs, we've got impact measurements. And so I think when you can run democratization like a program, it actually starts showing up more in the vernacular of a lot of other business functions. I think that can be very good. I think
Hmm.
when you can run it as a program, you can start measuring things like efficacy, training, coverage, impact, a lot of things that I think are to make sure that it's done, quote unquote, in a good way. Now, of course, the question is, yes, does that change the role of a researcher? Yeah, sometimes. Like part of your team might be overseeing those programs.
Hmm.
Again, I think that's good growth for your team. I think some ways, theoretically, it can give us a lot more time to do the deeper thinking work. I don't think that's always worked out for teams. And
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
excited, especially I've seen customers actually over time leaning on us, both our
Hmm.
tools as well as our service and support to actually start handling some of their democratization programs.
Hmm.
So we almost like report to them in a way. So they actually
Right.
take more time to kind of do some of the kind of thorny, deeper thinking work. I do
Hmm.
think there's always going to be a role for deep thought, but I do think we have to figure out like, you know, to quote like Daniel Kahneman, like we have to be able to operate on two systems. We have to be able to think fast and we have to be able
And
to think
uh,
slow, right? And
think
I think
slow.
that
Yeah.
if we try to slow everything down, I think we're going to fail as a field.
Yeah.
But I think we're also just try to do everything as like instant insights with no thought and no friction. I think we'll also fail. I think we need to be able to kind of again back to we need to be a dual threat, you know.
Right. Yeah. That's that's and I think therein lies a challenge. I think every org would have its own balance, and you have to kind of lean in on that balance. So, we have a bunch of audience questions in the chat. If you like questions, like please upload it. We also have a bunch of like pre-submitted questions that our audience was gracious enough to submit before. So let's dive into those. I don't want all of
I
your
actually want to say
I
one other comment on
yeah. Yes,
democratization
please.
is like our democratization now, we're at this very interesting moment where
Mm-hmm.
everything is I mean, technology could argue has been a democratizer
Station, of course. Yeah.
forever, but now
Right.
literally everything is being democratized.
Democrats. Yeah.
Coding is
Yeah.
being democratized. The design is being democratized. I assume executive leadership, like everything is kind of like we have tools to facilitate. So it's also, again, a power moment since this field has kind of been going through this almost longer than anybody. We
Yeah.
might have great
Yes.
insight on how to be more strategic about how those things should and shouldn't be democratized. Another place where we actually, I think, have distinctive value we can add.
Yeah, absolutely. And this idea, I think leaning into that democratization is probably a good idea, at least like controlling that and making sure that it's happening from,
Yeah.
you know,
Back to judo.
best,
Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
we're gonna do it in the right
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
We're gonna do it in a way that we all want. We all want like actually good, useful insights that we can work with, right? Yeah, of course. Yeah,
right.
we're gonna do it this way if that's what we want, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. All karate, no. No. Is it all judo, no karate?
Got it
Yes.
backwards. Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Perfect. There you
Exactly.
go.
Cool. Let's get in some audience question. If you have folks, if you have questions, please post it on the Q&A. And then we'll also run into some. We'll also see how many of the pre-submitted questions we can answer. All right. So let's get right into it. Um, let's see. Siobhan says discovery research shapes strategy, but doesn't directly tie to KPIs. How do you make the connection visible and credible to the leadership? So we've talked about it a little bit. But we could quickly kind of see, can we tie strategic research to ROI, and if so, at least qualitatively. I know quantitatively you mentioned it's not necessary, but qualitatively, how would you tie it?
Yeah. I think it's obviously we can do fundamental research, but typically it should be towards some end or some
Some
area
and
of
yeah,
application. So it might
yeah,
be, hey, we're really trying to understand our user. Let's say like something seems very far away. Great use of a diary product would be like,
right,
really just want to understand the day in the
yeah,
life of our audience, right?
right.
Cool, do that. Now at the end, there's going to be some way that it might tie towards. So are we thinking about new opportunities for products and services we can provide to them?
Mhm.
Very strategic, right? Are we thinking about ways that our brand and marketing can better resonate with them? So I don't even think necessarily it's always hitting it to the KPI. It's just kind of pulling it back into the vernacular of the business. Is it going to give us growth
Priorities
opportunities,
of the business. Yeah.
action opportunities? Is it going to give us better insight on where we're falling short? Whatever it is, I think it's just making sure that you're translating it from I guess I'd say the simple comment, and this might be a little controversial, but I do see one of the core jobs of the researcher is to take the challenge of being the first pass of the translator to relevance. Not
Mhm,
being, I am just giving you the facts. I am
mhm,
not actually like I don't see the neutral party role as
mhm.
successful or as strategic as taking the first pass of here's why I think you should care about this. Here's what I think it
Right.
can do in the org. I think that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. And I think in general, it's probably a good idea. Speaking again of the executive presence, I think one of the things that I recommend to like, leaders who are kind of getting to that executive level is like this idea of like make a stand, like, stand, like you're not here just to present the facts. You're here to interpret the facts. And that goes true for, I think that's a broader, I think true for everyone, and especially in our function, because, you know, collection of facts is not the biggest challenge, right? um we have we'll take one more question from the submitted from the live Q&A, and then we'll talk about we'll take some of the existing pre-submitted questions as well. So well, the question Ben asked, here's something I've been pondering over as I pivot into AI. Does research into AI need strategy at the beginning or all along the funnel, right? Like, so do you think it's like, is the idea that research strategy is or strategy for research is kind of, oh, we just kind of figure out what to build and then hand it over, or do you think and then we go into tactical mode? Like, how do you foresee it, and how does it work in Dscout, and how do you foresee it working in other orgs?
What do you think about that?
I think with the AI, the devil is in the details. I feel like a lot, like you said, a lot of products that are out in the market, you can feel and see that AI is kind of, oh, it's just slapped AI on top of it, slapped the chatbot on top of it. It's like that cannot be a great that cannot be the MO for every org, right? And it's so there's some strategic discussion and decision that needs to be taken, of like, hey, what are the big picture AI initiatives we can launch? But to me, The real impact is like, hey, what does that product look like, and what kind of impact are we looking at? What kind of workflow can we change? And I think that's very much missing in a lot of like AI old tools with AI added to them. And I feel that's the real opportunity. The middle of the funnel is the real opportunity. That's kind of my thought.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I think there is a lot of back to like I think UXRs are tremendously well are actually well positioned for really helping to make AI experiences a lot better. Uh,
Hmm.
so much
Right,
of it is what is the context of the user? I always
right.
laugh. This field pioneers all of the terms that get used everywhere in business. Context window, hilarious. Like I'm like, oh my God, we're the only people in business that have been talking about context and
Context for
researchers
the
for like
longest
decades, and now it's here. It's our moment. But like,
Everybody's talking about it.
okay,
Yeah.
what is the context of the user? Is the response and output really relevant? Is it taking in the right context? Is it
Hmm.
relevant to what they're actually trying to achieve? Did it answer it in the right way? All of these things around eval and LLM monitoring and outputs, those are things that our field is well suited to do and support.
Hmm.
So I do kind of
Yeah.
agree with you. Like, I think I think there are a couple, I guess the long and the short of it is I think we have a role to play top to bottom.
Hmm.
I think sometimes right now organizations I think, uh, might find our role. We might find that we have more traction in our role mid funnel and down versus top
Hmm.
of funnel, where I think everyone
Right.
is spending so much time trying to figure out what to focus on and where to play that unless we're judoing, supporting those conversations versus
Right.
adding like another complexifier, we might find that we
Right.
get more traction kind of with things that are kind of being worked on and launched. But I would generally say anywhere you can find traction,
Hmm.
like it's good, right? On this stuff.
Hmm.
These are huge bets companies are making, lots of uncertainty. I do think anywhere you can add value is where I would add value. And the more
Hmm.
you add value in one part, you'll kind of be graduated to other questions that are
Yeah.
maybe quote unquote more strategic. So
100%. 100%. And I think there's a lot more confusion down the funnel than up the funnel at this
yeah, I
point.
think there's
I think we've
confusion
all, yeah.
everywhere. But like I
Right.
said, there might be a lot of, opinions, or again, uh, play where you feel like you have at least some permission to have impact. So
Right. Let's take one question kind of from pre-submitted. Brittany asked, what should a new research manager, uh, I think the emphasis on new research manager, know about the shift in landscape of research with AI tool? Is qualitative and quantitative research discipline collapsing? Wow, that's a big,
yeah.
that's a loaded
I don't
question.
know if was it Brittany you said? Was that the name?
Yeah,
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 I don't
yeah,
know if
yeah.
Brittany is here. I was curious
Okay,
if we could understand what they meant by collapsing. I
collapsing.
interpreted that more as like converging, like that the
Right.
disciplines are merging together,
Uh-huh.
not like
Right.
in like becoming defunct. But I don't know.
Right.
How do you interpret that question? This is okay. This is like classic. This is like what an LLM has to do, by the way, is
Oh man,
someone submits a
two
prompt and it has to
researchers.
be like, what did they mean by that? I don't know, right? So, okay, how did you interpret that, Prayag?
Man, two research talking to each other, we can keep asking each other's opinion.
Yeah.
But I think there could be like a much more broader, it's like, is it collapsing, meaning, like you said, is it coming together? I don't know if that's what I think they meant. Like, is that going to be a thing in the future? Is it going to be important in the future? And I think the answer to that is like, it is going to be important. And I do think there is going to be a lot of merging happening between quantitative and qualitative. I think that, and it's in some way, it is kind of the holy grail, right? Like this idea of like, we can say like something like from analytics, we know that X behavior is happening that is costing us all this, value. And then, qualitative tells us why that is happening, right? And I feel like we are a lot closer to it today than we ever were in the past, and I think that's the future.
I do think
I
you're going to
do
see
think this, yeah,
more convergence between
right,
quality and quant.
yeah,
Um,
yes,
and I think, which I think is exciting. I think our field has
Right.
been in many ways like part of our challenge as a field is we our field has literally has been shaped by its constraints.
Right.
Qual or quant,
Yes.
fast
100%.
or slow, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
we literally our structure is built around constraints. So I think there is some exciting opportunity with AI where we can start reconsidering what those constraints look like. Um,
Hmm.
and I would kind of tie it back to I wish I could tell everybody like it's gonna be perfect.
Hmm.
We're gonna be thriving in the future and all, but I guess I'm here to like one of the things I, think about this a lot, and I feel like I talk to people a lot. I don't know if this is helpful to you all, but it's helpful to me. Like, we just live at a moment where there is a tremendous amount of possibility. The future is not written.
Hmm. Right.
Actually, I don't know if this sounds like too new agey. We have a role in writing the future. The people on this call, all of us, we have a role in
100%.
shaping the future that is happening. So it is up to us to conceive of the futures where we do play a vital role, where we are
Hmm.
thriving, where, as I said, maybe your leadership is coming to you and being like, I've got no idea what to do with AI. Help me, right? Like,
Right.
what has to be true for those things to happen? I know that you think about that. I know I think about that. How do we, as tool builders and partners in this field, do that? Of course, there are scenarios where we don't have much of a role to play too. We got to
Right.
admit that those exist out there. But if we're
Right.
not shaping those futures of the possibility, if we're not spearheading where things can go, then who else is?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of up to us, right? That's a little bit how I think about it. I think that I do believe that organizations will still have many jobs to be done around understanding what people want, what people need, what really matters, deciphering human behavior, pushing that back in. And one thing I'll say specifically related to AI, I don't know if you think about this, Prayag, but I'm curious your take on it, which is in AI, uh, the act of creating is much easier. I think we all
Hmm.
probably agree. There will be a lot of creation.
Yeah.
I believe in the world of AI, the act of resonating and and kind of building an audience and a customer base will become much harder because the act of creating will become much easier.
Right.
Historically, some of our job has been to manage the expense of creation. And I think our
Right.
job will shift a little bit from managing the expense of creation to helping to understand the resonance points that move from the simple act of creation to more like what do we need to do to actually build a customer base and an audience and kind of like to winning, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So shifting a
Right.
little bit from what to build and a little bit more from how to win with what to build.
Right. Yeah. That's I 100% agree. I think one of my so it feels like whenever there's a new technology, whether that's the internet, whether that's the mobile phone, whether that's LLM, I think there are kind of two kind of competing forces. One is the power law. Like, all these technologies tend to kind of consolidate um, power influence within a few, like a smaller subset of the market, right? Like winner takes all. You can see this in like on like YouTube and Instagram and all of that. At the same time, you also have this democratization force, which kind of pulls that power law back, right? So everybody. So initially there is a lot of democratization, then there's a lot of consolidation, right? So what that means is there is incredible if you can build products that can take advantage of that power law and can become this subset of products that have a lot of influence that have most of the market. I think the rewards are outside. So like if you make the right calls today, the rewards can be completely disconnected in a good way to the effort that you need, right? So now it's like I'm not going to just I don't need to prove the ROI if I can bring in a product or a service or that is going to be the dominant in the next 10 years, and that's becoming a lot more possible now than so. my hope is that the entire like leadership around the world, whether small company, large companies, kind of tend to see that, research can now help you make those bets that can have like an outsized impact within your organization, within your market. Then it's possible now than it was ever before, and recognizing that. So not always just talking about the ROI, but also thinking about like, hey, the ROI could be literally be like infinite on some efforts like this. And
Yeah,
and
I
I
think that
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say maybe a couple comments to that end. I think obviously, we I think this kind of thinking. I was also a history major, so I do like to try to look back at through all these
Right.
changes and try to figure out like what's been similar and what's been different. I mean, maybe a little glimmer of hope for the field is like as technology has developed. When I started in this field, I think you could have gotten the whole field together in like a, airport Marriott like ballroom.
Hmm.
There were only like a couple hundred people doing this.
Right.
Um, you know, um, Now we feel like a pretty decent sized stadium, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Right.
And every
Yeah.
time there's been a technology that's infused itself more and more in people's daily lives, it's generally beget two things. One is like a new set of questions and a
Right.
deeper focus on user experience. I think historically the answer would be we're going to see more of that with AI, not less of it.
Hmm.
If you were just
Right.
banking on like the way, yeah, this may be ahistorical. I'm not saying that history doesn't have
Right.
counter trends, but
Mhm.
historically, that's the trend we would see.
Right.
Historically, and historically, I think through each of these transitions, there has been an unlock of tools that help us to enable a different type of a more impactful type of research for the moment that we're in, right? So
Mhm.
historically, those things have been true. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe they won't be true this time. Maybe we're in an ahistorical moment,
Yeah.
but I think in general, that gives me some heart as I kind of think about where we are in this moment. So
100%. 100%. Let's take a couple. Let's try to do two questions if we can. Let's do one. Like, and then we'll see if we have time for more. Um, there is this I've been thinking about a lot about the risk of integrating AI into research in two related bases: less internalized knowledge, and concern about wasting participant time. It bothers me to think of participants' thoughts and feelings essentially being analyzed only by LLM and losing so much in the process. Do you have thoughts on those things? I would love to hear your thoughts, and then I obviously
yeah, this is something I think a lot about, and I don't know. We might disagree on this one a little bit,
okay,
Prayag.
all right,
To be
let's do
fun.
it.
Let's get into a debate.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
I definitely think a lot about this. I know our team thinks a lot about it. And
Hmm.
it's kind of tied to something I said earlier, just around like how I said kind of insights were emotional in a sense. There's something to be
Hmm.
experienced, right?
Hmm.
I think one of the challenges that we see in the land of AI is for us to learn things, for us to have insights, for humans,
Hmm.
sometimes we need to, oh, you change things up. Okay, I
I
like
did.
that.
I promise your
Okay,
team that I'll
okay,
put these QA
You're getting
curves,
a
QR curves.
side
Oh,
message like you
yeah.
have to put up the
Yes.
slides. We're running out of time. Okay,
Exactly.
anyways, okay. I was like, man, I thought, okay, there we go.
No.
But I think, we do the way our brains work is we need some
Hmm.
friction somewhere. We
Hmm.
need some immersion, or I guess is another way of saying it. So I think this question is very fair. If
Hmm.
something auto generates the research, auto conducts the research, auto creates the findings and shares it out, I'm not sure that it has any impact.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because making a guide, a discussion guide, is a cognitive act of learning.
Right.
Conducting an interview is a cognitive act of learning that human
Yeah.
brains, maybe an LLM doesn't need it or a transformer doesn't much need that type of insight, but
Right.
the way our brains work, we need it, right? So I think we're definitely very consciously thinking about that as we're building things.
Hmm.
And I think it will be kind of a key point in the field, which is how do we get back to we got to get people to feel things. We got to get people to make connections in their brains literally. That is our job, right? So
Right.
to
Yep.
build tools that afford that versus replace that.
I don't know if it's an and or
Yeah.
question, right? Like there is so much work to be done in our field, and that I mean both as individuals, but also as like an industry. There's just so much work to be done. I feel like there is a time and a place for AI to be doing some part of that
Oh,
work, right?
absolutely. I think
And
it's picking and choosing. So I agree
yeah,
with you. Yeah, like
right, right,
it's not that AI can be a tremendous force enabler, but I think we still have to
right.
figure out these places for where human we have to prepare the, human thoughts and how we can
Yeah,
absorb things, right? So totally agree with you,
right.
Mark. So
So as tool creators, I think it's our job. I feel it's our job to kind of build and show like, hey, here's what's possible. But then also educate, be like, hey, this is where it won't work. And this is where you truly do need, like, can I use like AI moderator to do all of the interviews? No, of course not. Like that's not, but like, can it help like a little bit? Like for some projects? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a new methodology? Yeah. But then I think we are also learning as we are building to kind of see what kind of impact it has on the industry.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Michael, we could keep doing this for another 2 hours,
Do
but
it.
I,
So,
I,
okay.
I know.
Go.
I really appreciate your time. I am so glad. We'll have to have you back. This is one of my best conversations are always with you, Michael. I always learn something. I hope the audience learned something today, and at least something it gives them something to think about. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate everything. Thank you, folks, for staying over in a minute. There are a couple of QR codes. Scan them. They'll take you to some amazing resources that both Dscout and Mike and HeyMarvin have. But thank you, Michael, again, and we'll have you back. We'll really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Okay. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right. Thanks, everyone.